Welcome to wooenglish, where you learn English through stories. Today, we have a captivating story that's not only educational, but also unfolds a significant chapter in history. Before we dive into the narrative, remember, clear and simple sentences will guide our journey, making learning both enjoyable and effective. If you find this story helpful, please press the like button to reward us. It motivates us to bring more stories your way. Also, don't hesitate to write a comment sharing your thoughts or any questions you might have. Engaging with the story actively is a great way to enhance your learning experience. Now, let's begin our story. Chapter 1. Early Life. In the small town of Braunau am Inn, Austria, on a cold day in April 1889, a child was born into the family of Alois and Clara Hitler. This child, named Adolf, was the fourth of 6 siblings, but only he and his sister Paula would survive to adulthood. The early years of Adolf's life were marked by the simplicity and challenges of a modest family living in a border town. Alois, Adolf's father, was a customs officer, a job that provided a stable but modest income. He was a strict man, demanding obedience and respect from everyone around him, including his family. Clara, Adolf's mother, was kind and caring, a soft presence in the rigid atmosphere created by Alois. Adolf's relationship with his father was complicated. He often found himself at odds with Alois's strict rules and expectations. In contrast, he shared a close and affectionate bond with his mother, who was always there to offer comfort and understanding. As Adolf grew, he attended the local school where he was just another face among the many children of the town. He was neither an outstanding student, nor one who struggled greatly. He was average in many ways. However, even from a young age, Adolf showed a keen interest in art and history, subjects that allowed him to escape into worlds far beyond his small hometown. Adolf's schooling also exposed him to various ideas and histories, including the story of the German people. The tales of past glories and the unity of the Germanic tribes stirred something in him, a sense of belonging to something greater than himself. This was the beginning of his interest in German nationalism, a path that would significantly influence his future. The Hitler family moved several times during Adolf's childhood due to Alois's job, which meant Adolf had to adapt to new schools and make new friends repeatedly. These moves made it difficult for him to form lasting friendships, contributing to his solitary nature. Despite these challenges, these experiences also taught him how to quickly assess and adapt to new environments, a skill that would serve him well in the future. In 1900, tragedy struck the Hitler family when Adolf's younger brother Edmund died from measles. This loss deeply affected Adolf, who became more withdrawn and introspective. His academic performance began to decline, and his interest in school waned. His father wanted him to follow in his footsteps and become a civil servant. But Adolf resisted this path. He dreamed of becoming an artist, a vision not supported by his practical and stern father. The conflict over his future strained Adolf's relationship with Alois further. Despite the tension at home, his mother continued to be a source of encouragement and support for his artistic aspirations. In these early years, the seeds of discontent and rebellion were sown in Adolf, driven by his complicated family dynamics and the rigid expectations placed upon him. As Adolf approached his teenage years, the differences between him and his father became more pronounced. Alois passed away in 1903, leaving the family in a state of financial uncertainty. Adolf's reaction to his father's death was complex. While it freed him from the pressure of following a career he had no interest in, it also left him without direction at a critical point in his life. Clara, now the sole caretaker of the family, struggled to keep the household together. Adolf's relationship with his mother grew even closer during this time, as he saw her struggle and did his best to support her, despite his own uncertainties about the future. Adolf continued his schooling, but with little enthusiasm. His dream of attending the Academy of Fine Arts Vienna became his focus, a goal that he believed would lead him to the future he desired. However, life had a different path in store for him, one that would take him far from the aspirations of a young boy in a small Austrian town. Chapter 2. Vienna and Munich. In the early 1900s, a young Adolf Hitler left his hometown, seeking a new life in the bustling city of Vienna. Dreaming of becoming an artist, he carried with him little more than his aspirations and a deep desire to succeed. Vienna, with its grand buildings and vibrant culture, seemed like the perfect place to start afresh. However, the city was also a place of stiff competition and challenging realities, especially for a newcomer like Adolf. Upon his arrival, Adolf was filled with optimism. The first thing he did was apply to the prestigious Academy of Fine Arts Vienna. He had spent months preparing his portfolio, confident in his artistic abilities. However, his hopes were dashed when his application was rejected. The feedback was crushing. The evaluators found his drawings unsatisfactory, lacking in the talent required for the academy. Disappointed but not defeated, Adolf applied again the following year, only to face rejection once more. These rejections marked the beginning of a challenging period in Adolf's life. With his dreams of becoming an artist fading, he found himself struggling to make ends meet. Vienna, the city of opportunity, became a place of hardship. Adolf's savings quickly dwindled, forcing him into a life of poverty. He moved from one menial job to another, living in hostels, and at times on the streets. It was a stark contrast to the life he had envisioned in this grand city. During these difficult years, Adolf spent much of his time in libraries, reading about history, politics, and philosophy. Vienna was a melting pot of ideas and ideologies, and Adolf was exposed to a wide range of viewpoints. It was here that he first encountered anti-Semitic ideologies. Vienna had a significant Jewish community, and anti-Semitism was not uncommon in the city's political and social discourse. Adolf began to absorb these ideas, which were to shape his future beliefs and actions significantly. Despite his hardships, Adolf remained in Vienna, determined to find his place in the world. He continued to paint and sell his artworks, though it was barely enough to survive. His experiences during this time deepened his sense of frustration and disillusionment with society. He felt marginalized and overlooked, fueling a growing bitterness within him. In 1913, seeking a change of scenery and perhaps a new start, Adolf moved to Munich, Germany. Munich was another cultural hub, but it offered a different atmosphere from Vienna. Here, Adolf hoped to escape the failures and frustrations of his past. He continued his efforts to sell his paintings, and even managed to gain a small following for his work. Life in Munich seemed slightly more promising, but it was soon to take a dramatic turn with the outbreak of World War I. The war presented a new direction for Adolf's life. He volunteered for the German army, seeing it as an opportunity to prove himself and serve the country he had come to adopt as his own. The experience of fighting in the war and the camaraderie among soldiers gave Adolf a sense of belonging he had long craved. The harsh realities of war also reinforced his belief in the survival of the fittest, a concept that would later underpin his political ideology. After the war, with Germany's defeat and the social and economic turmoil that followed, Adolf returned to Munich, a changed man. The war had intensified his nationalist feelings and his disdain for the Weimar Republic, which he blamed for Germany's humiliations. Munich, in the post-war period, was ripe with political unrest and was a breeding ground for extremist political movements. Adolf found himself drawn to these movements, seeing them as a means to bring about the change he believed Germany needed. It was in this atmosphere of political agitation that Adolf began to take his first steps into politics. He joined the German Workers' Party, which would later become the Nazi Party. His skills as an orator and his radical ideas quickly made him a prominent figure within the party. The disappointments and struggles of his years in Vienna and Munich had set the stage for Adolf's rise to power. They had shaped a man who was determined, at any cost, to leave his mark on Germany and the world. Adolf's time in Vienna and Munich was a period of significant transformation. From a struggling artist to a soldier, and then a budding politician, these years were marked by personal hardships, ideological formation, and the first steps toward a future that would have a profound impact on history. While Adolf's early encounters with failure and his subsequent radicalization are parts of a complex and controversial legacy, they offer important lessons on the impact of social and political environments on individual beliefs and actions. Chapter 3: World War I and its Impact. As the early 20th century unfolded, Europe found itself on the brink of a monumental conflict. In 1914, the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand of Austria set off a chain reaction, leading to the outbreak of World War I. Nations were drawn into the conflict, including Germany, which mobilized its forces for what many thought would be a short war. Among the many young men who volunteered for the German army was Adolf Hitler, a failed artist and a man in search of purpose. For Adolf, joining the army was more than a patriotic duty. It was a chance to find belonging and direction. He was assigned to a Bavarian regiment, where he served on the Western Front. The war was unlike anything the world had seen, marked by trench warfare, gas attacks, and immense loss of life. Adolf experienced the harsh realities of war firsthand, surviving battles that claimed the lives of millions. Despite the dangers, Adolf proved to be a dedicated soldier. He was awarded the Iron Cross, Second Class, for bravery in battle, followed by the Iron Cross, First Class, an honor rarely given to a foot soldier. These awards were a source of great pride for Adolf and affirmed his belief in his own destiny. Yet, the war was also a time of profound disillusionment for him. He witnessed the collapse of camaraderie and the devastating impact of modern warfare on the human spirit. As the war dragged on, the initial enthusiasm that many soldiers felt turned to despair. The promise of a quick victory faded, replaced by the grim reality of a world at war. Adolf, like many others, was caught in the grinding machine of conflict, enduring the mud, the blood, and the endless artillery barrages. The end of the war in 1918 came not as a glorious finale, but as a bitter defeat for Germany. The Treaty of Versailles, signed in 1919, imposed harsh penalties on the country, including significant territorial losses, military restrictions, and the obligation to pay reparations. The treaty was a shock to the German people, who felt betrayed by their leaders and humiliated by the international community. For Adolf, The war's end and the treaty's terms were a personal and national humiliation. He believed that Germany had been stabbed in the back by its own politicians, Jews, and communists, a narrative that was gaining traction among many Germans. The defeat and the subsequent treaty fueled his anger and resentment, sharpening his political beliefs. In the chaotic post-war years, Germany was a nation in turmoil. Political unrest, economic instability, and social upheaval created a fertile ground for radical ideologies to take root. Adolf found himself drawn into this tumultuous landscape, his experiences in the war and his disillusionment with the treaty guiding his path towards politics. Adolf's transition from soldier to political activist was marked by his determination to change the fate of his country. He joined the German Workers' Party, which later became the National Socialist German Workers' Party, or Nazi Party. His skills as an orator and his fervent nationalist message resonated with many who were disillusioned with the status quo. The impact of World War I on Adolf and on Germany was profound. The war had transformed a struggling artist into a decorated veteran with a mission to restore Germany's pride and power. The Treaty of Versailles, with its harsh terms, served as a constant reminder of the country's defeat and humiliation, fueling Adolf's ambitions and setting the stage for the rise of the Nazi Party. Adolf's experiences in World War I and the aftermath of the Treaty of Versailles were pivotal in shaping his worldview and political aspirations. The war had offered him a sense of purpose and belonging, while the post-war period provided the disillusionment and anger that would drive his political agenda. These years were a crucible, forging a leader who would leave an indelible mark on history. As we reflect on this chapter of Adolf's life, it is important to understand the context in which his ideas and beliefs were formed. The impact of World War I and the Treaty of Versailles on Germany cannot be overstated, as they contributed to the economic, political, and social conditions that allowed extremist ideologies to flourish. Adolf's story is a reminder of the consequences of war and the importance of addressing the underlying issues that lead to conflict and division. Chapter 4. A New Beginning in Politics. After the turmoil and despair of World War I, Adolf Hitler found himself in a Germany that was hardly recognizable. The once proud nation was now grappling with the harsh realities imposed by the Treaty of Versailles. It was during this time of national uncertainty and personal disillusionment that Adolf began to find a new purpose in the realm of politics. In 1919, Adolf's interest in politics led him to attend a meeting of the German Workers' Party, DAP, a small political group in Munich that shared his nationalist and anti-communist views. At first, he was just another member of the audience, but his fervent speech on a debated topic caught the attention of the party's leaders. They saw in him a powerful speaker who could articulate the anger and frustration felt by many Germans. Adolf was quickly invited to join the party, and he accepted, seeing it as a platform to further his ideas and influence. Adolf's involvement with the DAP marked the beginning of his political career. He was an active and passionate member, using his skills as an orator to attract new members and spread the party's message. His speeches, which combined fiery rhetoric with a call for national revival, resonated with many who were disillusioned with the current state of affairs in Germany. As Adolf became more involved in the party, he began to shape its direction and policies. He advocated for a name change to reflect a broader nationalist and socialist agenda, leading to the formation of the National Socialist German Workers' Party, or NSDAP, commonly known as the Nazi Party. This new name signified the party's attempt to combine nationalist and socialist ideas, aiming to appeal to a wide range of Germans who felt betrayed by the mainstream political parties. Under Adolf's influence, the Nazi Party adopted the swastika as its emblem, a symbol intended to represent the Aryan identity and German nationalist pride. He also helped to formulate the party's 25-point program, which outlined its ideology and political goals. These included the unification of all Germans in a Greater Germany, the rejection of the Treaty of Versailles, and the exclusion of Jews from German society. Adolf's role in the Nazi Party quickly grew from a skilled speaker to its undisputed leader. He demanded absolute loyalty from party members and established a paramilitary wing, the Sturmabteilung SA, to protect party meetings and intimidate opponents. His leadership style was autocratic, but it was effective in consolidating power and control within the party. The early 1920s were a period of significant growth for the Nazi Party, largely due to Adolf's leadership and charisma. He travelled across Germany, holding rallies and giving speeches that drew large crowds. His ability to connect with people's emotions and articulate their frustrations made him a popular figure among those who felt marginalized by the political and economic situation in Germany. However, Adolf's ambitions extended beyond leading a political party. He envisioned himself as the leader who would restore Germany to its former glory. This ambition led to the Beer Hall Putsch in 1923, an attempted coup d'etat that aimed to overthrow the Bavarian government and march on Berlin. The putsch failed, and Adolf was arrested and sentenced to prison. Yet this setback did not diminish his resolve. Instead, it provided him with the time to reflect on his strategies and write Mein Kampf, a book that outlined his ideology and future plans for Germany. Adolf's early involvement in politics and his role in transforming the German Workers' Party into the Nazi Party marked a crucial turning point in his life and in German history. Through his dynamic leadership and powerful rhetoric, he managed to turn a fringe political group into a significant force in German politics. This period laid the foundation for the rise of the Nazi Party and set the stage for the dramatic events that would follow. The story of Adolf's early political career is a testament to the power of persuasive leadership and the impact of charismatic authority. It also serves as a reminder of the dangers of extremism and the importance of political engagement and vigilance to prevent the rise of authoritarianism. As we reflect on this chapter, we are reminded of the complexities of history and the profound consequences of individual actions on the course of events. Chapter 5. The Beer Hall Putsch. In November 1923, Munich witnessed an event that would become a pivotal moment in the history of Germany and the rise of Adolf Hitler. This was the Beer Hall Putsch, an audacious attempt by the Nazi Party to overthrow the Bavarian government and ignite a national revolution. The putsch was a bold move, driven by desperation and the belief that action was necessary to save Germany from its post-war despair. The story of the Beer Hall Putsch begins in a Munich beer hall, where Gustav von Kahr, the Bavarian state commissioner, was addressing a crowd. Adolf Hitler, along with his followers from the Nazi Party and the paramilitary SA, saw an opportunity to launch their coup. They believed that by taking control in Bavaria, they could march on Berlin and overthrow the Weimar Republic, leading to a national rebirth. On the evening of November 8, 1923, Adolf and his associates, including Ernst Röhm and Hermann Göring, burst into the beer hall. With a pistol in hand, Adolf fired a shot into the ceiling and declared that a national revolution had begun. He proclaimed the formation of a new government with himself at the helm, intending to seize Munich and then advance on Berlin. Adolf managed to temporarily detain Kahr and other key officials, convincing them to support his cause. However, this support was hesitant and short-lived. As the night progressed, the putschists' plan began to unravel. The Bavarian authorities, loyal to the Weimar Republic, quickly mobilized to suppress the uprising. By the morning of November 9th, Adolf and his followers, numbering around 2,000, marched through Munich towards the Bavarian War Ministry in an attempt to take control of the city. However, they were met by police and state troops, ready to defend the government. A confrontation ensued, and in the chaos, gunfire erupted. 16 of Adolf's supporters and 4 police officers were killed, and many were wounded. Realizing the putsch was failing, Adolf fled the scene. The brief uprising was crushed, and the leaders of the coup were soon arrested. Adolf was captured 2 days later, hiding at a friend's home. The failed putsch was a significant setback for the Nazi Party and a personal blow to Adolf, who found himself facing serious charges for his role in the coup. The trial that followed was a national spectacle. Adolf, along with several co-defendants, was charged with high treason. However, he used the courtroom as a stage to broadcast his views, portraying himself as a patriot trying to save the nation. Surprisingly, the trial gained him sympathy in some quarters and increased his visibility across Germany. In April 1924, Adolf was sentenced to 5 years in Landsberg prison, a relatively lenient punishment given the seriousness of the charges. His time in prison was far from harsh. He was allowed visitors and was treated well by the guards. It was during this period of incarceration that he dictated Mein Kampf, My Struggle, to his deputy, Rudolf Hess. The book laid out his ideology, including his views on race, nationalism, and his plans for Germany's future. The beer hall putsch and the subsequent trial had far-reaching consequences for Adolf Hitler and the Nazi Party. Although the putsch was a failure, it marked a turning point. It was a moment that brought Adolf into the national spotlight, providing him with a platform to spread his message. The events also taught him that power could not be seized through violent overthrow. Instead, it had to be achieved through legal means, by winning the support of the German people. Adolf's imprisonment was short-lived. He was released in December 1924 after serving less than 9 months due to good behavior and political pressure. The experience of the putsch and his time in prison helped to solidify his control over the Nazi Party and refined his strategy for gaining power. The beer hall putsch stands as a testament to the volatility of the early Weimar Republic and the lengths to which Adolf Hitler was willing to go in his quest for power. It serves as a reminder of the dangers of extremism and the importance of democratic institutions in preventing the rise of authoritarian leaders. Chapter 6. Mein Kampf. In the quiet confines of Landsberg prison, following the tumultuous beer hall putsch, Adolf Hitler found himself with time to reflect on his failed coup and the future direction of his political ambitions. It was here, in a small cell, that he began dictating a book that would come to be known as Mein Kampf, or My Struggle. This book, written with the assistance of Rudolf Hess, was not just a memoir of Adolf's experiences, but a manifesto outlining his ideology and plans for Germany's future. Mein Kampf is divided into 2 volumes. The first volume, penned during Adolf's imprisonment in 1924, recounts his early years, his participation in World War I, and the founding of the Nazi Party. More significantly, it delves into the themes and beliefs that would become the foundation of Nazi ideology. The second volume, written after his release, focuses on the political strategy he planned to employ to gain power legally. The themes explored in Mein Kampf are broad and disturbing. Adolf articulates his belief in the superiority of the Aryan race and the need for Lebensraum, or living space, for the German people. He vehemently expresses his anti-Semitic views, blaming Jews for many of the world's problems, including the defeat of Germany in World War I. Additionally, he criticizes the Treaty of Versailles, communism, and the Weimar Republic, presenting himself as the only leader capable of restoring Germany's former glory. Despite its hateful ideology, Mein Kampf provides insight into Adolf's ability to manipulate nationalist sentiment, historical grievances, and economic insecurities to his advantage. He was skilled at identifying the fears and frustrations of the German people and presenting his vision as the solution to their problems. The impact of Mein Kampf on Adolf's rise to power is complex. Initially, the book was not a bestseller, and many of its ideas were not new but reflected wider currents in German society at the time. However, as the Nazi Party grew in popularity, so did the book's significance. It became a tool for indoctrination, with the government eventually making it a mandatory gift for newlyweds and soldiers. By the time Adolf became Chancellor of Germany in 1933, Mein Kampf had laid much of the ideological groundwork for the Nazi regime. The publication of Mein Kampf also marked a turning point in Adolf's political strategy. Having learned from the failure of the beer hall putsch, he realized that power could not be seized through violence alone. Instead, he sought to gain it through manipulation of the democratic process, using his writing to spread his ideology and attract followers to his cause. Mein Kampf remains a controversial and painful symbol of Nazi Germany's brutal legacy. Its themes of racial purity, nationalistic fervor, and anti-Semitism were not merely abstract ideas but would be translated into deadly policy during the Third Reich. The book's publication and subsequent popularity highlight the danger of extremist ideologies and the importance of vigilance in preserving democratic values. In reflecting on Mein Kampf, it is crucial to understand the context in which it was written and the role it played in Adolf Hitler's ascent to power. It serves as a reminder of the power of words to inspire, but also to incite hatred and violence. The lessons from this period in history underscore the need for critical thinking and the rejection of ideologies that seek to divide and dehumanize. Chapter 7. The Path to Power. In the late 1920s and early 1930s, Germany was a country in turmoil. The joy of recovering from the aftermath of World War I was short-lived, as the nation plunged into economic despair during the Great Depression. Unemployment soared, and the German people's faith in their government waned. It was under these dire circumstances that Adolf Hitler saw an opportunity to ascend to power, employing a mix of political strategy, manipulation of public opinion, and exploitation of economic woes. After his release from prison, Hitler was more determined than ever to pursue power through legal means. The Nazi Party, under his leadership, began to meticulously organize and expand its reach across Germany. Hitler's charisma and the party's promises of revival resonated with many Germans disillusioned with their current leaders. One of Hitler's strategies was to present himself and the Nazi Party as the only solution to Germany's problems. he capitalized on nationalistic fervor, promising to tear up the Treaty of Versailles, bring back jobs, and restore Germany's greatness. His speeches, often filled with vitriolic rhetoric against Jews and communists, blamed these groups for Germany's economic hardships and social unrest. The Nazi Party also mastered the use of propaganda, utilizing the latest technology and media to spread their message. Films, radio broadcasts, and newspapers were all employed to create an image of Hitler as Germany's savior. The SA, Sturmabteilung, the party's paramilitary wing, paraded in the streets, projecting strength and order in contrast to the chaos of the times. Another key element in Hitler's rise was the fragmentation of the German political landscape. The Weimar Republic was marked by a multitude of parties and a constant state of coalition government, making it difficult to achieve stable governance. The Nazis exploited this fragmentation, positioning themselves as a radical alternative to the ineffective status quo. The turning point came in the elections of July 1932, when the Nazi Party won 37.3% of the vote, becoming the largest party in the Reichstag, German parliament. However, Hitler was not immediately appointed Chancellor. The incumbent president, Paul von Hindenburg, distrusted him and his party's radical agenda. It took several months of political maneuvering, backroom deals, and the persuasion of influential businessmen and politicians for Hitler to be appointed Chancellor on January 30th, 1933. Hitler's appointment was seen by some as a means to control and moderate the Nazi Party's influence. They believed that by incorporating Hitler into the government, they could harness his popularity for their ends while keeping his more extreme policies in check. This miscalculation would have dire consequences. Once in power, Hitler moved quickly to consolidate his hold on the country. The Reichstag fire in February 1933, which the Nazis blamed on communists, provided a pretext for the suspension of civil liberties and the arrest of political opponents. The Enabling Act, passed shortly thereafter, gave Hitler the power to enact laws without the Reichstag's consent, effectively making him a dictator. The path to power for Hitler was marked by strategic opportunism, manipulation of public sentiment, and exploitation of political and economic crises. His rise was not inevitable, but was facilitated by the conditions of the time and the underestimation of his ambitions by his political opponents. Hitler's journey to becoming Chancellor of Germany teaches us the importance of vigilance in democratic societies. It shows how economic despair and political instability can lead to the rise of authoritarian leaders who promise simple solutions to complex problems. The story of Hitler's rise to power is a reminder of the need to protect democratic institutions and values, even in the face of severe challenges. Chapter 8. Consolidation of Power. The early 1930s in Germany was a period marked by rapid and dramatic changes, culminating in Adolf Hitler's transition from Chancellor to the country's undisputed ruler. This chapter unfolds the story of how Hitler consolidated his power, employing a series of calculated moves that would reshape Germany's political landscape forever. Just a month after Hitler was appointed Chancellor in January 1933, a pivotal event occurred that would expedite his rise to total power. The Reichstag, Germany's parliament building, was engulfed in flames. The Reichstag fire of February 27, 1933, was a turning point. The Nazis quickly blamed the communists for the arson, portraying it as part of a broader plot to overthrow the state. This event gave Hitler the pretext to convince President Hindenburg to sign the Reichstag fire decree, suspending many civil liberties, including freedom of press, speech, and assembly. The decree was a critical step in suppressing opposition. It allowed the Nazis to arrest thousands of communists, socialists, and critics, effectively silencing voices against them. The swift and ruthless response to the Reichstag fire showcased the lengths to which Hitler was willing to go to secure his position and eliminate challenges to his authority. Following the Reichstag fire, the elections in March 1933 did not give the Nazi Party the absolute majority Hitler had hoped for, but it did not deter his ambitions. The next move was the Enabling Act, a law that would change the course of German history. On March 23, 1933, the Reichstag passed the act, formally titled The Law to Remedy the Distress of People and Reich. This law granted Hitler the power to enact laws without the Reichstag's approval, effectively sidelining the parliament and placing legislative power directly in his hands. The Enabling Act was the legal foundation for Hitler's dictatorship, as it nullified the checks and balances of the Weimar Republic, allowing him to govern by decree. The consolidation of power also involved the restructuring of the state and the suppression of any potential sources of opposition. Political parties were banned, trade unions dissolved, and a centralized authoritarian state was established. The Gestapo, secret police, expanded its surveillance and repression, targeting anyone deemed an enemy of the state. The Nazi regime deployed fear and intimidation to maintain control, with concentration camps being established for political prisoners. Another critical aspect of Hitler's strategy was the integration of the SA and the SS, an elite paramilitary unit, into the state's security apparatus, giving him loyal and ruthless forces to enforce his policies. However, the SA's growing power and its leader Ernst Röhm's ambitions became a concern for Hitler. In 1934, he ordered the Night of the Long Knives, a purge that saw the assassination of Röhm and other SA leaders, along with various political adversaries. This action not only eliminated a threat to Hitler's power, but also demonstrated his willingness to use lethal force against former allies. The culmination of Hitler's consolidation of power was the death of President Hindenburg on August 2, 1934. Hitler quickly took the opportunity to merge the positions of Chancellor and President, declaring himself the Führer, leader of Germany. This move was solidified by a plebiscite, where the German people were asked to approve Hitler's new role. The result was overwhelmingly in favor, though the fairness of the vote is highly questionable given the oppressive political climate. By the mid-1930s, Hitler had dismantled the Weimar Republic's democratic institutions and transformed Germany into a totalitarian state with himself at its helm. The speed and efficiency with which he established control were astonishing, relying on a mix of legal changes, strategic appointments, and sheer force. The consolidation of Hitler's power is a chilling reminder of how democracy can be dismantled from within. It underscores the importance of protecting civil liberties, the rule of law, and the mechanisms of checks and balances in a democratic society. The story of Hitler's rise to total power is not just a historical account, but a warning of the dangers of authoritarianism and the vital need for vigilance in safeguarding democracy. Chapter 9. The Third Reich. With Adolf Hitler's rise to absolute power, Germany entered a new era, marked by profound changes that would leave a lasting impact on the world. This period, known as the Third Reich, was characterized by the transformation of German society, economy and governance, underpinned by the totalitarian principles of the Nazi regime. At the heart of the Third Reich was the concept of a national community, where individual interests were subordinate to the perceived needs of the German people. This idea led to significant changes in German society, as the Nazi regime sought to unify the nation under its ideology. The regime promoted values such as loyalty, duty, and obedience, while suppressing any form of dissent or opposition. Education and youth were particularly targeted for indoctrination. Schools were overhauled to teach Nazi values, emphasizing racial theories and German history that glorified the nation's past and Hitler's role in its future. The Hitler Youth and the League of German Girls became the primary means for engaging the young, instilling them with the regime's ideals and preparing them for their roles in the national community. The Nazis also sought to control and influence culture and the arts, which were viewed as vital tools for shaping public opinion and promoting their worldview. Books deemed incompatible with Nazi ideals were banned and burned, while art, music, and theatre were regulated to ensure they conveyed the approved messages. Radio became a powerful instrument of propaganda, with Hitler's speeches and Nazi-themed programs dominating the airwaves. Economically, the Third Reich implemented policies aimed at ending the unemployment crisis and revitalizing Germany's economy. Through massive public works programs, such as the construction of the Autobahn and rearmament, significant strides were made in reducing joblessness. However, these measures also served a dual purpose, preparing Germany for war. The regime's economic policies were intricately linked with its military ambitions, leading to increased state control over industry and the militarization of the economy. One of the darkest aspects of the Third Reich was its racial ideology. The Nazis pursued a relentless campaign of racial purification, targeting Jews, Romani people, the disabled, and others deemed undesirable. Discriminatory laws, such as the Nuremberg Laws of 1935, institutionalized racial discrimination and laid the groundwork for the Holocaust. The regime's obsession with racial purity also manifested in programs aimed at increasing the Aryan population, including the Lebensborn program, which encouraged births of racially pure children. The governance of the Third Reich eliminated all traces of democracy and instituted a centralized authoritarian state. The principles of Führerprinzip, leader principle, placed Hitler at the apex of the government, with absolute authority. The state's power was enforced through organizations like the SS, Schutzstaffel, and the Gestapo, secret state police, which used terror and surveillance to quash resistance and maintain control. Internationally, the Third Reich pursued an aggressive foreign policy aimed at expanding German territory and influence. The remilitarization of the Rhineland, the annexation of Austria, Anschluss, and the seizure of Czechoslovakia were steps towards war, culminating in the invasion of Poland in 1939 and the outbreak of World War II. The Third Reich represented a period of profound transformation for Germany, as the Nazi regime sought to reshape every aspect of the state and society in accordance with its totalitarian ideals. The changes brought about during this time had far-reaching consequences, leading to devastating war and human suffering. As we reflect on the establishment of the Third Reich, it is crucial to understand the mechanisms of totalitarian control and the impact of ideology on governance, society, and the economy. This period serves as a somber reminder of the dangers of unchecked power and the importance of safeguarding democratic values and human rights. Chapter 10. Propaganda and the Hitler myth. In the era of the Third Reich, the power of propaganda became fully realized. Under Adolf Hitler's rule, the Nazi regime harnessed the full potential of media and the arts to craft a carefully curated image of Hitler and to disseminate its ideologies to every corner of German society. Joseph Goebbels, appointed as the Reich Minister of Propaganda, orchestrated a vast propaganda machine that permeated all aspects of life. His belief in the power of propaganda to shape public opinion and behavior was instrumental in creating the myth of Hitler as the Führer, the savior of Germany, who was destined to restore the nation's greatness. Radio, often referred to as the people's receiver, played a crucial role in this propaganda effort. Affordable radios were made available to ensure that every German household could listen to broadcasts, which included Hitler's speeches, patriotic music, and programs that glorified the Nazi ideology. These broadcasts painted a picture of a united and strong Germany under Hitler's leadership, rallying the public around the regime's goals. The film industry was another tool in the regime's propaganda arsenal. Movies produced during this time not only entertained but also carried messages that promoted the Nazi worldview. They depicted idealized visions of German life, glorified the regime's achievements, and disseminated anti-Semitic and anti-communist narratives. The annual Nuremberg rallies were grand spectacles, filmed and widely shown to demonstrate the might and unity of the Nazi movement. Print media, too, was tightly controlled. Newspapers and magazines were used to spread the government's messages, censoring opposing views and ensuring that the public received a steady diet of propaganda. Hitler's image was ubiquitous, appearing in publications, posters, and stamps, contributing to his cult of personality. Education played a pivotal role in propagating Nazi ideals. Textbooks were rewritten to reflect the regime's racist ideologies and to glorify war and loyalty to Hitler. School children were taught to revere Hitler as a hero, and the Hitler Youth Organization indoctrinated the young with Nazi beliefs, preparing them to serve the state. The arts were not spared from the regime's propaganda efforts. Art was used to convey the Nazi ideals of racial purity and national strength, with artists encouraged to produce works that celebrated these themes. Meanwhile, degenerate art, which included modern, abstract, and non-Aryan works, was condemned and removed from galleries. This pervasive use of propaganda was aimed not just at promoting Nazi ideologies, but at creating the Hitler myth, an image of Hitler as an infallible leader, deeply connected with and beloved by the German people. This myth played a critical role in maintaining the regime's power, as it fostered loyalty and devotion to Hitler, even in the face of wartime hardships and atrocities. The effectiveness of Nazi propaganda was evident in the way it managed to mobilize a nation, suppress dissent, and instill a collective belief in the destiny of the Third Reich. However, the reliance on propaganda also revealed the regime's insecurities and its awareness of the need to constantly reinforce its legitimacy and suppress any challenge to its authority. Reflecting on the role of propaganda in the Third Reich, it is crucial to recognize the power of media and communication in shaping public opinion and the importance of critical thinking in discerning truth from manipulation. The story of propaganda and the Hitler myth serves as a stark reminder of how easily societies can be led astray by charismatic leaders and carefully crafted messages, underscoring the value of freedom of expression and the press in safeguarding democracy. Chapter 11. Persecution and the Holocaust. In the darkest chapters of history, few events are as harrowing as the Holocaust, a period marked by the systematic persecution and murder of 6 million Jews, along with millions of others deemed undesirable by the Nazi regime. This chapter delves into the escalating persecution that led to this genocide, reflecting on the catastrophic violation of human rights that occurred. The Nazis' rise to power in 1933 marked the beginning of a nightmare for Jews and other minorities in Germany. The regime's ideology, deeply rooted in racial purity and anti-Semitism, quickly translated into legislative action. The Nuremberg Laws of 1935 stripped Jews of their citizenship, forbidding marriage or sexual relations between Jews and those considered Aryan. These laws institutionalized racial discrimination and were the legal framework for further persecutions. The night of November 9th to 10th, 1938, known as Kristallnacht, or the Night of Broken Glass, marked a significant escalation in the Nazi campaign against Jews. Jewish homes, synagogues and businesses were attacked across Germany and Austria, leaving streets littered with broken glass. This pogrom signaled a shift from discrimination and persecution to outright violence, leading to the death of hundreds and the detention of thousands in concentration camps. The outbreak of World War II in 1939 saw the expansion of the Nazi regime's policies of persecution and extermination across occupied Europe. Ghettos were established in major cities to segregate Jews from the rest of the population, subjecting them to inhumane conditions and widespread suffering. The Warsaw Ghetto, the largest of these, held over 400,000 people in cramped, squalid conditions, leading to a devastating toll of death from starvation and disease. The Nazi regime's final solution was the deliberate, systematic plan to exterminate the Jewish people. Extermination camps, distinct from concentration camps, were constructed for mass murder, equipped with gas chambers designed to kill hundreds at a time. Auschwitz, Birkenau, Treblinka, and Sobibor are among the most infamous of these death camps, where millions were murdered in cold blood. The Holocaust also targeted other groups, including Romani people, disabled individuals, Polish and Soviet civilians, political prisoners, homosexuals, and Jehovah's Witnesses, each considered unworthy of life, according to Nazi ideology. This period of targeted genocide remains one of the most profound tragedies in human history, showcasing the depths of cruelty and inhumanity that can arise from hatred and bigotry. Reflecting on the Holocaust, it is crucial to remember the victims and to understand the consequences of unchecked hatred and discrimination. The international community has since sought to ensure that such atrocities never occur again, leading to the establishment of laws and conventions aimed at protecting human rights and preventing genocide. This chapter on persecution and the Holocaust aims not only to recount historical events, but also to encourage reflection on the importance of standing against prejudice and defending the rights and dignity of all people. It serves as a reminder of the responsibility we share to foster a world where such atrocities are relegated to the past, never to be repeated. Chapter 12. World War II, the Early Years. World War II, a conflict that engulfed the globe, began with strategic moves by Adolf Hitler that would change the course of history. This chapter explores the early years of the war, focusing on key events such as the invasion of Poland, the fall of France, and the Battle of Britain, and their profound impacts on Europe and the world. The war's inception was marked by the invasion of Poland on September 1st, 1939. Germany's Blitzkrieg, or lightning war, tactics, a combination of rapid, coordinated attacks by aircraft, tanks, and infantry overwhelmed Polish defences. This invasion prompted Britain and France to declare war on Germany, signalling the start of a global conflict that would last 6 years. The invasion of Poland was not just a military campaign, but also a harbinger of the terror that would come. Civilian populations suffered immensely, and the war's brutal nature was revealed in the massacres and the beginning of ethnic cleansing. The swift fall of Poland also demonstrated the effectiveness of the Blitzkrieg strategy, setting the stage for further German aggression in Europe. In the spring of 1940, Hitler's forces turned westward, launching attacks on Denmark and Norway, and quickly moving through the Netherlands, Belgium, and Luxembourg. These rapid victories were partly due to the element of surprise and the innovative tactics of the German military. The fall of France in June 1940 was a stunning development that shocked the world. The French, with one of the most formidable armies in Europe, were quickly defeated. The German forces bypassed the heavily fortified Maginot Line by advancing through the Ardennes forest, a move considered highly risky but ultimately successful. Paris fell on June 14th, and France signed an armistice with Germany shortly thereafter, leading to the occupation of the northern part of the country and the establishment of the Vichy regime in the south. The Battle of Britain, which followed the fall of France, marked a turning point in the war. It was the first major military campaign fought entirely by air forces. The Royal Air Force RAF of Britain faced the German Luftwaffe in a battle for control of the skies over the UK. Despite being outnumbered, the RAF successfully repelled the German air assaults, thanks in part to the effective use of radar technology and the resilience of British pilots and citizens. The failure of Germany to achieve air supremacy over Britain marked the first major defeat of Hitler's military forces and prevented the planned invasion of Britain. The early years of World War II were characterized by rapid changes in the balance of power in Europe. The Blitzkrieg tactics allowed Germany to achieve significant territorial gains in a short period. However, the resistance faced during the Battle of Britain showcased the limits of German military might and the determination of the Allies to defend their freedom. These events had profound impacts on Europe. Countries under German occupation experienced harsh rule, with widespread repression, forced labor, and the persecution of Jews and other minorities intensifying. The fall of France and the Battle of Britain also had significant psychological effects, demoralizing some while galvanizing others to resist the Nazi regime. Reflecting on the early years of World War II, it is crucial to understand the human cost of the conflict and the resilience of those who fought for freedom against tyranny. These events remind us of the importance of preparedness, unity, and the defense of democratic values in the face of aggression. Chapter 13. The War Expands. As World War II progressed, the conflict reached new heights of destruction and scope, transforming into a truly global war. This chapter explores two pivotal events that significantly expanded the scale of the conflict: the invasion of the Soviet Union by Nazi Germany, and the entry of the United States into the war. In June 1941, Adolf Hitler launched Operation Barbarossa, the code name for the invasion of the Soviet Union. This decision to break the non-aggression pact signed with Joseph Stalin in 1939 marked a dramatic escalation of the war. The operation was unprecedented in scale, involving millions of German soldiers along a front stretching thousands of miles. The initial success of the German forces was staggering, as they rapidly advanced deep into Soviet territory, capturing millions of prisoners and inflicting severe losses on the Red Army. However, the invasion of the Soviet Union proved to be a crucial turning point in the war. The vast distances, harsh weather, and determined resistance by Soviet forces began to wear down the German military. The brutal winter of 1941, one of the coldest in recorded history, caught the German soldiers unprepared and significantly hampered their advance. The siege of cities, like Leningrad, and the battle for Moscow tested the limits of human endurance and military capability. The entry of the United States into World War II followed another landmark event, the attack on Pearl Harbor by Japan on December 7, 1941. This surprise military strike against the American naval base in Hawaii led to the United States declaring war on Japan the following day. Shortly thereafter, Germany and Italy, as Japan's allies, declared war on the United States, thus widening the conflict even further. The involvement of the United States brought immense industrial and military resources to the Allied cause. American production capacity, combined with the mobilization of millions of soldiers, began to tip the balance of the war. The Lend-Lease Act, which allowed the United States to supply military aid to its allies, had already been providing crucial support to Britain and the Soviet Union, bolstering their defenses against the Axis powers. The expansion of World War II had profound implications. The invasion of the Soviet Union opened up the Eastern Front, which would become the deadliest theater of the war, resulting in catastrophic losses for both sides. It also solidified the Soviet Union's role as a key member of the Allied powers, setting the stage for the post-war geopolitical landscape. The entry of the United States into the war marked a turning point in the Allied powers' favor, significantly boosting their military and economic strength. The American commitment to the war effort, symbolized by the rallying cry, "Remember Pearl Harbor," united the nation in a common cause. The subsequent battles in the Pacific and the eventual opening of a second front in Europe in 1944 would be decisive in the defeat of the Axis powers. The expansion of World War II illustrates the unpredictable nature of conflict and the ways in which the ambitions of totalitarian leaders can lead to widespread suffering. It also highlights the resilience of nations and peoples in the face of aggression and their capacity for unity when defending fundamental freedoms. Reflecting on this period of expansion in the war, it is essential to recognize the sacrifices made by countless individuals who fought for a better world, and to understand the importance of international cooperation in preventing such conflicts in the future. Chapter 14. The Turning Point. World War II, a conflict that stretched across the globe, reached pivotal moments that marked the beginning of the end for the Axis powers. This chapter delves into two of the most significant events, the Battle of Stalingrad and the Allied invasion of Normandy, both of which were turning points in the war. The Battle of Stalingrad, which lasted from August 1942 to February 1943, was one of the deadliest battles in history. It was not just a military engagement, but a symbol of resistance against Nazi Germany. The city of Stalingrad, now Volgograd, became the stage for a brutal confrontation between the German and Soviet forces. The battle began with the German army advancing into the Soviet Union under Operation Barbarossa, aiming to secure oil fields in the Caucasus and cut off the Volga River as a transportation route. The fighting in Stalingrad was fierce and relentless. The city was reduced to rubble, but the Soviet Red Army, led by General Vasily Chuikov, mounted a heroic defense, fighting for every street and ruin. The turning point came when the Soviets launched Operation Uranus in November 1942, encircling the German Sixth Army. Cut off, and without sufficient supplies, the German forces in Stalingrad were left to face a harsh winter and constant Soviet attacks. In February 1943, the remnants of the Sixth Army surrendered. The defeat at Stalingrad was a devastating blow to Hitler's ambitions in the East and marked the beginning of the German retreat from the Soviet Union. The Allied invasion of Normandy, known as D-Day, on June 6, 1944, was another critical turning point. This massive amphibious assault was the largest seaborne invasion in history and marked the beginning of the liberation of Western Europe from Nazi occupation. The operation involved over 1 million Allied soldiers from the United States, Britain, Canada, and other nations. They landed on 5 beachheads in Normandy, facing formidable German defences. The planning and execution of the Normandy invasion were remarkable feats of military strategy. The Allies used deception techniques to mislead the Germans about the invasion location, ensuring the element of surprise. Despite rough seas and strong German fortifications, the Allied forces secured the beaches and began pushing inland. The Battle of Normandy, which followed the landings, saw fierce fighting in the French countryside. The liberation of Paris in August 1944 was a symbolic victory that boosted Allied morale and marked the decline of Nazi control in Western Europe. The battles of Stalingrad and Normandy were more than military victories. They symbolized the resilience and determination of the Allied forces to overcome tyranny. The sacrifice and bravery of the soldiers who fought in these battles are remembered as testaments to the human spirit's capacity to confront and defeat oppression. These turning points in World War II not only shifted the balance of power, but also demonstrated the importance of unity and collaboration among nations fighting for a common cause. The lessons learned from these pivotal moments continue to resonate, reminding us of the cost of war and the value of peace and freedom. Reflecting on the significance of the Battle of Stalingrad and the Allied invasion of Normandy, we are reminded of the complexities of warfare and the transformative power of collective action in the face of adversity. These events mark not only strategic victories, but also milestones in the quest for a world where liberty and justice can prevail over tyranny and oppression. Chapter 15. The Fall of the Third Reich. The final chapter of World War II in Europe tells the story of the collapse of Nazi Germany, a period marked by intense battles, strategic retreats, and the ultimate downfall of one of history's most tyrannical regimes. This chapter explores the events leading to the fall of the Third Reich, focusing on the last battles and the final days of Adolf Hitler. As 1945 dawned, the Third Reich was crumbling under the weight of the advancing Allied forces. From the west, British and American troops pushed into German territory, while from the east, the Soviet Red Army advanced rapidly, determined to reach Berlin first. The Nazi war machine, once seemingly invincible, was now struggling to defend its own borders. The Battle of the Bulge, Hitler's last major offensive in the West, ended in failure for Germany. The Allies overcame the surprise attack and pushed German forces back, further weakening their hold in Europe. Meanwhile, the Soviet Union launched the Vistula-Oder offensive, liberating much of Poland and making a swift advance toward Germany. The fall of Berlin was the final blow to the Nazi regime. In April 1945, the Soviet army encircled the city, trapping the remaining German forces. the Battle of Berlin was fierce, with heavy casualties on both sides. The streets of the capital became battlegrounds and the city suffered extensive destruction. Inside his bunker in Berlin, Hitler was a man facing the end. With the Allies closing in and his empire in ruins, he clung to unrealistic hopes of victory. The reality of defeat, however, was undeniable. On April 30, 1945, as Soviet troops fought their way through Berlin, Hitler took his own life, refusing to face the consequences of his actions. The news of Hitler's death spread quickly, signaling the imminent end of the war in Europe. On May 7, 1945, Germany offered an unconditional surrender to the Allies, which was formally accepted the following day, May 8th, celebrated as Victory in Europe Day, VE Day. The Third Reich, which Hitler had boasted would last 1,000 years, had fallen after just 12. The fall of Nazi Germany marked the end of World War II in Europe, but its impact extended far beyond the cessation of hostilities. The war had left the continent devastated, with millions dead and cities in ruins. The Holocaust had claimed the lives of 6 million Jews, along with millions of others persecuted by the regime. The world was left to reckon with the horrors of the war and the genocide that had occurred. The defeat of Nazi Germany also set the stage for the Cold War, as the Allied powers, the United States and the Soviet Union, emerged as superpowers with conflicting ideologies. The division of Germany, and particularly Berlin, symbolized the ideological divide that would characterize the coming decades. Reflecting on the fall of the Third Reich, it is crucial to remember the lessons of history. The end of Nazi Germany underscores the resilience of those who fought for freedom and the importance of standing against tyranny. It also serves as a reminder of the cost of war and the need for vigilance in preserving peace and justice. The story of the Third Reich's fall is not just a tale of military defeat, but a testament to the human spirit's capacity to overcome darkness. It is a call to remember the past, honor the memory of the victims, and commit to a future where such atrocities are never repeated. Chapter 16. The Aftermath of War. The end of World War II marked a turning point in global history, closing a dark chapter filled with destruction and opening a new era of rebuilding and reflection. The aftermath of the war was a time of reckoning, healing, and significant political shifts that would shape the world for decades to come. This chapter explores the consequences of the war, focusing on the Nuremberg trials, the division of Germany, and the broader impact on global politics. The Nuremberg trials were a series of military tribunals held after the war to bring Nazi war criminals to justice. Conducted in the city of Nuremberg, Germany, these trials were unprecedented in their scope and significance. For the first time in history, individuals were held legally responsible for crimes committed during war, including crimes against humanity, war crimes, and the genocide known as the Holocaust. High-ranking Nazi officials were tried, and the trials exposed the depth of the atrocities committed under the Third Reich. The Nuremberg trials were a landmark in the establishment of international law, setting precedents for handling war crimes and crimes against humanity. The aftermath of the war also led to the division of Germany, a nation at the heart of the conflict. Germany was divided into 4 occupation zones, controlled by the United States, the Soviet Union, the United Kingdom, and France. This division laid the groundwork for the eventual split of Germany into 2 separate states in 1949. the Federal Republic of Germany, West Germany, aligned with the Western Allies, and the German Democratic Republic, East Germany, under Soviet influence. The division of Germany became a symbol of the Cold War, representing the ideological divide between the East and West that would dominate global politics for the next 4 decades. The impact of World War II on global politics was profound. The war led to the decline of European colonial empires and the rise of the United States and the Soviet Union as superpowers, setting the stage for the Cold War. The United Nations was established in 1945 with the goal of preventing future conflicts and fostering international cooperation. The war also prompted significant changes in international relations and the formation of new alliances, including the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, NATO, and the Warsaw Pact. The war's end brought about the need for reconstruction and reconciliation. Europe lay in ruins, with cities destroyed and millions displaced. The Marshall Plan, an American initiative, provided vital aid for the rebuilding of Western European countries, helping to restore economies and stabilize the region. In Asia, the reconstruction of Japan was overseen by the United States, leading to significant political and economic changes. The aftermath of World War II also forced a global reckoning with the horrors of the Holocaust. The genocide of 6 million Jews, along with millions of others persecuted by the Nazis, prompted reflections on human rights and the need for vigilance against hatred and intolerance. The phrase, "never again," became a call to remember the victims and prevent future genocides. Reflecting on the aftermath of World War II, it is clear that the war's end was not just a moment of victory, but the beginning of a complex process of rebuilding, justice, and reconciliation. The lessons of the war and its aftermath continue to influence international relations, legal principles, and our collective commitment to peace and human rights. The story of the war's aftermath is a testament to the resilience of nations and individuals in the face of devastation. It highlights the importance of accountability, the challenges of reconstruction, and the enduring impact of the war on the global order. As we look back on this period, we are reminded of the capacity for renewal after loss and the ongoing need to build a world based on understanding, cooperation, and respect for human dignity. Chapter 17. Reflecting on the Legacy. The legacy of Adolf Hitler and the Nazi regime is a profound chapter in the annals of history, marked by unparalleled atrocities, the reshaping of nations, and the indelible impact on millions of lives. As we reflect on this dark period, it is crucial to consider the lessons learned and the importance of remembering history to prevent the recurrence of such tragedies. The Nazi regime, with its ideology rooted in hate and its machinery of war and genocide, serves as a stark reminder of the depths to which humanity can sink. The Holocaust, the systematic extermination of 6 million Jews along with millions of others deemed undesirable, is perhaps the most harrowing testament to the consequences of unchecked hatred and bigotry. It underscores the necessity of standing against discrimination and intolerance in all its forms. Reflecting on the legacy of Hitler's rule also prompts us to consider the dangers of authoritarianism and the vital importance of democracy and civil liberties. The rise of the Nazi regime was facilitated by the erosion of democratic institutions and the manipulation of nationalistic sentiments. It teaches us the value of safeguarding democratic principles, ensuring the rule of law, and protecting the rights and freedoms of all individuals. The aftermath of World War II and the fall of the Nazi regime led to significant changes in international law and the establishment of mechanisms aimed at preventing future atrocities. The Nuremberg trials set a precedent for holding individuals accountable for war crimes, while the formation of the United Nations and the adoption of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights were steps toward fostering global cooperation and ensuring the protection of human rights. Yet, the legacy of the Nazi regime is not only about the lessons of what to avoid. It is also about the resilience of the human spirit, the capacity for recovery, and the potential for reconciliation. The rebuilding of Europe, the establishment of lasting peace, and the efforts to remember and honor the victims of the Holocaust are testaments to humanity's ability to overcome the darkest moments. Remembering the history of Hitler's Germany and the atrocities of the Nazi regime is crucial in educating future generations. It is not merely an academic exercise but a moral imperative. By keeping the memory of the past alive, we honor the victims and ensure that the horrors of history are not forgotten. This act of remembrance is a bulwark against the forces of hatred and extremism that continue to threaten the fabric of societies around the world. As we reflect on the legacy of Hitler and the Nazi regime, we are reminded of the responsibility that comes with memory. It is a responsibility to reject hate, to embrace diversity and inclusion, and to work tirelessly for a world where such atrocities can never happen again. The lessons of the past are guideposts for the future, illuminating the path toward a more just, compassionate, and peaceful world. The legacy of this period challenges us to look within and ask difficult questions about the nature of power, the allure of ideology, and the capacity for evil. It also inspires us to appreciate the strength of those who resisted, the courage of those who survived, and the commitment of those who seek justice and reconciliation. In conclusion, the legacy of Hitler and the Nazi regime is a complex tapestry woven from the darkest and most painful threads of human history. It is a legacy that demands our attention, reflection, and action. By learning from the past and committing to a future grounded in respect for all human beings, we honor those who suffered and ensure that their experiences serve as a perpetual call to uphold the dignity and worth of every person.